Well. So welcome to a new episode of Growth Hacking Culture Podcast. And this time we are going to be discussing about collaboration at work, the challenges and how to overcome them. Now, collaboration may not seem like necessarily a big problem in corporates, but it can be a challenge. One study found that 86% of employees believe that collaboration is essential for success. But only 53% of employees feel that their organization is effective at collaboration. I would say that is even more. And there is even more data that shows the impact of collaboration in the outcomes or the bottom line of organizations. For instance, there is a study by the Stanford Graduate School of Business found that the collaboration can increase employee productivity by up to 20%. That's a good thing. And a study by the University of California, Berkeley, found that companies that promote collaboration are more likely to be innovative and successful. Innovation. And then the famous McKinsey, who found that companies with a culture of collaboration are more likely to have high employee engagement and customer satisfaction. Real deep results. Now, in order to discuss about the topic, I am quite lucky because I have Dr. Tanvi Gautam. And the thing about Dr. Tanvi is that she is a specialist in organizational behavior. She's also a multi-award winning keynote speaker, executive coach, an author, and she's a senior faculty and program director in the famous Singapore Management University for executive development. And on top of these academical credentials, I may say that she has been working like la crème de la crème, as we say here, of organizations like Accenture, Goldman Sachs, MasterCard, Dyson, Coca-Cola, you name it. So you have been working with really a lot of the top organizations in the world. So I guess that gives you not only this academical credential, but also this in hands-on experience about what we are talking about today. She's also, by the way, the founder of Leadership Inc. And very soon we are going to have the new book of Dr. Tanvi, which is, by the way, about collaboration. But we will discuss a little bit more. Dr. Tanvi, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I really wanted to speak to you. By the way, as far as I understood, you are based in Singapore, where it is the place also where you are teaching in university and you are also working. Can you tell me a little bit more about how did you end up in Singapore?
Yeah, I mean, it was not planned at all. We were living in the US for more than a decade, and it was a very comfortable and blessed life. We had a two-car garage, and we had a backyard, and we had a stable job, and everything was going fine. And we said, listen, we are far too young to be living like we are 70. So why don't we do something that will actually make us feel that we are still very young and alive, like this is too much stability. And I'm a big believer in disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. So we decided we would run a small experiment and maybe move to Singapore and see how it goes. And before you know it, we decided that we wanted to make it home. And now we love this place so much. And I work all over the world, but Singapore is home now. So it started as an experiment, but became this big thing, and I'm really glad we did it.
Dr. Tanvi, I really love the word experimenting about in our lives, and I think we don't do it enough. Talking about experimentation, so organizations do not spend enough time experimenting in terms of what could be the most adapted or more agile way of working together. And somehow I feel that there is a dichotomy between what organizations really want. So can we really have, according to you and the experience that you got, can we really have a collaborative environment when at the same time we say we encourage this individual competition between employees, saying if you want to get there, you have to be better than the others, and at the same time work together? Isn't it like a little bit like contradicting?
Yeah, well, let me say something before we dive into that. I think My work is focused a lot on leading in the age of disruption, leading in the age of networks. And I think there are some realities of living and working in this environment that we have to accept. And the first of that is learning to navigate paradoxes. So yes, it is a paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you have individual contributors, and then you want them to, collaborate as well. I think that the two can coexist, but you have to pay attention to the dynamic and the interplay between the individual goals and the group goals. If you set up individual goals in a manner that are linked and rewarding the collaborative goals, there is not going to be that conflict.
Mm,
But I think most companies don't do that. What they do is they tend to mostly focus on individual goals and individual milestones while talking about collaboration. And that is where the clash comes in. And it's a dynamic balance that needs to be taken care of. There was an article by Dr. Heidi Gardner. She teaches at Harvard, and it's about how do you set up a scorecard for people who are working in teams and still being asked to collaborate, where weightage is given to individual goals and group goals at the same time so that they're not in conflict with each other. So I will not say that I'm a subject matter on the expertise of metrics and scorecards, but I can tell you that there is a need to pay attention that one is not playing off against the other. And
mm.
you're right. In a lot of organizations, that is how it happens. It's that famous article, rewarding X while asking for Y. And then we wonder why it's not happening. Well, it's because there is a clash.
Listen, you made me think, and I think that your comments prompted me in some of the companies that you have been with whom you have been collaborating, like Goldman Sachs, Accenture. So we are talking about organizations that really striving for the best and where people are selected from top universities, and at the same time they want to have ambitious employees. Is it more difficult for people for organizations in Goldman Sachs, like Goldman Sachs or Accenture, to adapt to a more collaborative environments than if you compare it, like, I don't know, with Coca-Cola, let's say, where it is like an average, good, healthy level of ambition, personal ambition?
I don't want to make generalizations about an entire organization, because I think depending on the country and the leadership and the team and all of that, I think it can differ. But let's talk about, can highly ambitious people thrive in a highly collaborative environment?
Yes.
I think that's the question you really are trying to dial into. And I think that if you are able to link individual ambition to collective ambition, is the only way it will happen. So let me tell you something which may shock some people. I've written this book, Deep Collaboration, right? The one that's coming out later next year. And I have mentioned this story in the book. I did not believe in this idea of collaboration when I started my career. I felt like it was a complete waste of time. I needed to get my job done. Can everybody please do their job? And can we, like, just take care of our own thing and get it out of the way? So you might say, well, how do you go from someone who would kind of roll their eyes when they said the teamwork makes the dream work? It's like, yeah, right. Like half the people are slacking off, other half, you can't get along with, and, it is so much to manage. I can't deal with it. And now I'm being on the other end talking about deep collaboration, because here's the truth. Anything that is worthwhile and anything that is at a large scale that's going to impact the world positively, there is no way you can do it as an individual contributor. I am and I was as ambitious as the other person when it comes to my goals. But what I have realized is that famous African saying, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I do want to go far. And yes, those people who don't have that mindset of understanding that the life of impact can only be had when we come together as a group to collaborate, because each person has something to contribute, they will probably never be able to reconcile that dynamic between individual ambition and collective ambition. But our impact on the world depends on carrying people with us, making a contribution together. And so it's funny because if you were to talk to me in 1990s, and I'm dating myself here, when I was in the corporate world, I would be the person who'd be like, do I have to be on a team? Like, can I just like do this on my own? Or like, what do you mean team building workshop? Like, I was so jaded about this concept of teamwork, but I have delivered some of my best work because of the collaboration that I have had with my clients and their teams. And so I'm a living example of when you start seeing the potential of what collaboration can do for you, you'll never look back. Never.
Mm. Uh, Tanvi, I really relate to what you're saying, uh, and you make me think about our personal, I don't know, cultural background. Let's put it that way. Like, I mean, I grew up in an environment where my family was pushing me to do the best, and when I was younger, totally, I was completely collaboration. What? Just do it. Now, maybe upbringing or the cultural background that we come from can have an influence on the way we perceive the world, especially when we are young. I come from a Jewish cultural background, so that makes that influences. I also know that the growth of India has made it that everybody thinks about, hey, I have to make it to the top. And in fact, it has been positive because thanks to that, we see many CEOs of top corporations around the world who have bosses who are Indian origin. Now, if we compare it a little bit with other cultures that are a little bit more collaborative, let's take the Nordics, for instance. So is it, what I'm trying to say here is it more difficult to go to the other side of to convert into a collaborative work style when you come from a cultural background that has mapped your brain, has wired your brain into performance or individual performance orientation?
I think that it is definitely difficult, but it is not impossible. I
Mm.
don't think you can use culture as an excuse to not step up and embrace what is a necessary skill. So perhaps you may need some work in understanding the importance of this, and you might need some skills that you may not necessarily have had. But that goes for almost everything. Why just collaboration? It's kind of like saying, I grew up in an environment where AI had nothing to do with anything. So now, do I have to learn it? Yes, you have to learn it because that is what you need. So whatever you need, whatever it takes. And I don't think that people who come from very collectivist cultures, say, for example, some Southeast Asian cultures, or maybe, say, the Chinese culture, that are brought up to think about the group first, then that they are in the individual, that they necessarily have an easier time in collaboration. I think they struggle with a different skill set of collaboration. Collaboration requires a huge number of skills, right? And so you could end up struggling with a different set no matter where you come from. But yes, I think culture does play a role, but I try not to over index on it, particularly maybe it's because my clients that I work with are so cosmopolitan and global in nature that at any given point in time, it's a multicultural team that's working together.
Mm.
At any given point in time, the leaders could come from, Latin America, and the team is primarily, Southeast Asian, or, vice versa. So ultimately, you need to acknowledge it that yes, it plays a role, but it's not it's not like a hereditary characteristic. It's not like, oh, your height is 5'6" and it's going to stay 5'6" for the rest of your life. No, you can grow as an individual, as a leader, from no matter what your orientation. But I mean, you've got me thinking. I just wonder whether my early career leanings were determined by what you are saying. I don't think I thought about that correlation before. Maybe not. The important part is I am not that now.
Indeed, indeed, we change. It is sometimes a natural progression, or we can call it wisdom. We become wiser with the age. That's the only benefit of the age. um, Listen, despite the fact that many human resources people have a psychology background, like for instance, I do remember that I did a quick study in the Middle East, like there was 60% of HR people who had any type of psychology background. Um, Despite that, there is a lot of misconceptions in the corporate environment, including human resources people who understand the human psychology in terms of how to foster collaboration, or what it is really collaboration, the definition itself. Like, we cannot be as simplistic as saying help each other. Help each other, it means it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to the other. We are doing it just for the hell of it. And so what do you think could be the most common misconceptions that you have encountered about collaboration?
Oh my God, we could do the
Please,
whole
please.
podcast about this. I think, first of all, collaboration in a lot of companies, people believe if you bring a team together and you give them a target and put them in a Microsoft team meetings, that by some magic collaboration will start happening.
The magic of Microsoft.
The magic of Microsoft, right? Because that's a very transactional approach. You will get coordination, but you will not get collaboration. There's a big difference between coordination and collaboration. Coordination is, okay, fine, I've done my task and I've sent you the file, now you do what you have to, and if you have an issue, you come back to me, and we can argue about whether it's the right approach or wrong. But that's, to me, that's more coordination. That's not collaboration. Collaboration does involve a sense of a tied ambition and a common sense of purpose and a common identity that most organizations don't spend time creating. I'm almost every conference I speak at, they're like, oh, we are one team, one company. And I'm like, are you? I mean, I see the backstage of so many organizations, and I think their heart is in the right place when they talk about one company, one team. But do they live that aspiration? I'm not so sure about that. Uh, so that's one. Just because you've got, you've put a team together and given them a goal, that doesn't mean collaboration will happen on its own. It has got to be nurtured. It's like a seed. You plant it, you water it, when it grows, you prune it, you add fertilizer to it. It's a team is a living, breathing entity, and you have to treat it as a living, breathing entity, and not just a bunch of roles that have been put together to meet some target somewhere, right? So I think that's one of the myths. I also think that we over-index on thinking that if we just put a bunch of smart, talented people together, that the job will get done. It doesn't work like that. This famous you're talking about HR, the HR people will say, oh, people are our biggest asset, or they are our biggest competitive advantage. And I'm like, no, people are not your biggest competitive advantage. Good people are your biggest competitive advantage. So are you working on creating them and retaining them and growing them? So there is a difference between people are our biggest asset to good people. And yes, they have to be nurtured along the way. Are you doing enough of that? Are people in the team feeling supported? Are they feeling resourced? Have you given them adequate resources? Have you given them a decision making structure? Have you given them an understanding about how they should be respecting boundaries of each other? There's so much that can derail a collaboration, that if you don't and that's in some ways was the impetus for the book, right? Because the book is about the 5 conversations you must have if you're thinking of collaborating, and most people don't have the collaboration conversations. They just jump head first into collaboration. So I suppose the biggest myth is pulling people together in a team, no matter how brilliant, is not going to lead to collaboration. And to your point, if they are smart, talented people who are over ambitious, and you're not linking the goals to the collective aspiration, then collaboration will still suffer. So there is so much to work on to get that dynamic of individual and teams right, that a team in name and a team in action can be sometimes very, very different things.
Tanvi, it just crossed my mind. Did you interview, like, not so long time ago, or maybe 1 or 2 years ago, like Adam Grant?
No, we were just speaking at the same conference, so maybe that
okay. That's something that came to my. You were talking about some words, and then it came to my mind that, oh, that's a conversation that I saw somewhere, like in a video somewhere. I don't remember exactly Well, you made me think about that. Um, so we have been discussing about these common misconceptions that are anchored, in fact, in human psychology. And I thought also about Adam Grant, because he talks a lot about the human psychology effects that produces in terms of productivity, and also into this what happens when people are in a competitive environment and they are not working together. So smart people doesn't pull it out. And there has been a lot of research. I think that there was this, wasn't it like an experiment that somebody did with like spaghettis and marshmallows, and putting together like Harvard people together with some kindergarten teachers or something like that. And my God, so the more people are like working towards an individual goal, the less performance you will get out of that. If for anyone, just Google this story about the spaghetti marshmallow experiment. It's really quite eye-opening. What have you seen as a practice that people can try to either copy or adapt to their environments in order to make more collaborative environment?
I think that what really helps in a collaborative environment is a number of things. First is being very clear about the reason for collaboration beyond just numbers and market share and left brain data on why we are here to collaborate. Because as long as the agenda is, oh, we are here to collaborate because we need to increase market share by 10%, it's not a very human way of talking about what this collaboration will really need to. If you want people to step into the collaborative mindset, you have to invite them to have a human conversation about why are we doing this, and ultimately what's the downstream impact of what we are doing. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't connect the team at a human level, you will not be able to get the best contribution, the best collaboration for people. So I'll give you an example. In some of the clients that I work with, when we begin our work, so I do a lot of work on storytelling, strategic storytelling. Mm-hmm. So we do some of these story circles where I invite the leaders to, tell stories. And I am always surprised by how there are people who will look at a colleague and say, I have worked with you for 10 years and I did not know this about you. Mm. And now that I know this about you, everything makes sense. Like there was this one lady who shared the story of how she was one of 6 children growing up, and they were very not very financially well off. And so there came a time when she had to stay out of school because her parents couldn't afford it. And she told her parents that, no, please, I really do want to study. I'd like to study, and I'll do my best, and I will always be on top of class. And they said, okay, we'll do what we can to make it happen. And she became fanatical about coming first in class, and acing on everything, and dotting every I and crossing every T, because and then she was also going for scholarships, etc. So she became this hyper performance focused person. And when she was telling the story, it was the first time that she actually articulated it to herself as to the pressure she has always felt around being number one, and everything has to be done in a precise manner, because that feeling of my world is going to fall apart if I don't has carried on with her. And her colleagues, and she kind of broke down when she was talking about it. And her colleagues looked at her and said, till now, and then there was a very authentic conversation, like, till now we used to think of you as this, slave driving and, always kind of this uptight person. But behind that uptightness, we see someone who faced so much to get where she has to, that this has become a norm for you, right? And they suddenly saw the human face behind that. Now, imagine if we had not done the storytelling session and everybody's like, oh, collaborate. Like, oh, do you want to collaborate with Amy? Oh my God, Amy. Now talk about Amy micromanaging everything. She must want everything done on time. Oh my God, Amy, because you don't know Amy as a person, as a human being. And we pretend like we don't have experiences and histories and backgrounds that end up impacting the way we interact with other people, we assume we have shared backgrounds. We don't. And anybody who's listening to this podcast, I would encourage you to go and find out a little bit about the people you're collaborating with, and you will be amazed and blown away with some of the stories of their lives. And with that newfound respect and the human connection, the line that I often say is, once I know you for who you are, I will never treat you for what you are. What you are, vice president of sales, head of marketing, chief of innovation, but who you are is the person behind the title. And once we find out who these people are, collaborating with them becomes a very different experience. Very different experience.
Tanvi, sorry, go on. I just interrupted you.
No, I was saying that this is something that I have seen, create such powerful teams, such unstoppable teams, because the starting point is very different.
Yep. There are two things that stay in my head. From one side, what you said, it is that purpose. It is important to start the journey towards collaboration. And the thing behind is that generating relatedness, generating emotions, creates meaning to what we do. We have to do collaboration, not because, as you said, like higher market share, but because we are doing it for the good of the community. Our community could be our peers at work. And I like the fact that this is how you relate to, in fact, to what you do, your purpose. This is teaching strategic storytelling. That's the necessity. It's not about better communicating, like in pragmatic scale, is to have impact, influence for the good of the people, because we follow things that are emotionally connecting with us. That's the first part of what I took of what you say. The second part, when you were talking about the example of this lady that was named as a slave driver, it made me think about one of the most common biases is that when a lady does something that it could be equal in terms of what a man does, she will be judged at least 3 to 4 times harsher than a man. And the human biases enter into a combination. The psychology is embedded in everything that we do in the workplace, either from collaboration to the perception of people, that we don't always think that this boss, this senior manager, this lady or this man can have stories behind that can make us very human. But if they had this opportunity to openly talk about it, if there was an environment that is more collaborative, where I feel safe to talk about it, like when we are in the kitchen talking with my family, then we can be more open and enhance even collaboration by sharing a little bit of our personal stories.
Yeah, but you see, the whole workplace has been, it wasn't meant for containing and honoring humanity. Workplaces were meant to be around machines and efficiency and keep emotions out of the workplace. When I began my PhD in the US, I was shocked to learn that the study of emotions in the workplace was seen as something worthy of studying and researching only in like about a decade ago. So I'm talking of like in the late 80s, in the late 1980s, because otherwise before this was the myth of the rational economic man. What have emotions got to do with anything? Leave emotions out the door. So be balanced in your thinking. And there is research to prove now that we actually are feeling creatures first. We feel first before we act, and we justify our feelings when we think about it. So I think a transition that we have to make in the workplace is to acknowledge that human beings are people who are driven more by emotions than logic. That is not to say throw logic out of the window, but we need to have conversations around that and learn to manage emotions. I think the entire work by Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence was part of that movement, where we were acknowledging that there is a need for discussing emotions in the workplace. But it's a skill that we have to learn. And there are some people, and going back to what you were saying earlier, some cultures that are not very comfortable with the display of emotions. They don't know how to express their own emotions, and they don't know how to handle the emotions of another person, because that wasn't a part of the cultural upbringing. So they, have to be taught on how to. I mean, the number of executive coaching clients who I get, it's interesting. Like, technically really smart, on top of their game, right? Being seen as a high potential, being seen as in line for the top job, etc. Can you please talk to them about, like, not having such rough edges, and just like,
Yeah.
being able to get along with the people, the collaboration part of it? And I'm like, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, how do I have rough edges and how do I rub people the wrong way? But if you're still doing it, then we need to talk about, why do you not have that capacity? Why do you have a blind spot where you are not attuned? And that word attuned is a very important word. You're not attuned to the emotions of the people around you. You're not attuned to the experience that the team is having around you, as you are asking them to reach, higher, faster, and better. And in some ways, the reason why the book is called Deep Collaboration is because at the surface level of collaboration, we are a Navy SEAL team, come in, get out, get the job done. But most organizations are not Navy SEALs, right? Our performance, especially over large term projects, restructuring projects, projects where we are looking at transformation, do involve emotions at the core of it, do require us to pay attention to the human element of collaboration, not just the transactional or the technical element of collaboration. And so leaders will have to learn a new vocabulary, whether it's managing their emotions or managing the emotions of others, whether it is understanding why people behave the way they do without dismissing them because of biases, or she is like this, or men are like that, or women are. Because, by the way, can I just say this and then I'll stop? Yes, there are biases against women, but let me tell you, there are biases against men as well. Okay. And I don't think that we do justice to men. We talk a lot about women in the workplace and motherhood in the workplace, because yes, women are primarily in a caregiving role. But I know of dads who are single fathers. I know of husbands who've got spouses with disability, etc. So we need to give men also an equal opportunity. So the problem is there are enough biases for both sides, and we need to address it.
Exactly. We are all humans. Tanvi, the example that you just mentioned about the Navy SEALs, and I mean, I just correlated with the title of your upcoming book, Deep Collaboration. It is quite impressive, because collaboration in the Navy SEALs, in my storyline, comes by the fact that people have in the Navy SEALs have to count on each other. Your survival depends on the guy just next door. And so it is a collaboration that is almost synergetic, that is all anchored. And of course, we cannot say at work, my life depends on my colleague, but at least that if we have this feeling of counting on each other, that's a different meaning than just, I will give you a hand on your project. By the way, when I have the time, I will come and do 1 hour with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. You're absolutely right. When I was referring to the Navy SEAL analogy, it was more around, that the front end of it that we see, just get together, get the job done, get away.
Yeah.
But the truth is that Navy SEAL teams are so, and I'm going back to that word, attuned to each other, and they work under so much pressure that you almost have to have this mind meld where you know exactly moving in one direction in the real version of one teams to make it happen. The trouble is organizations want the efficiency of the Navy SEALs without doing the work that the Navy SEALs have done at the back.
Exactly. Totally, Tanvi, totally. And that drives me to my next question. So today you ask any HR person, so how do we improve collaboration? So they will tell you, oh, let's do a team building exercise, let's do some training. The type of solutions to teach, and by teaching, I mean, in terms of corporate outcome, we mean practice, do it, not know about it. So how can we, is there any alternative to these team building exercises that, by the way, more and more people are hating, and these trainings that are boring, and I mean that we will forget in after 1 week, probably only 5% will remember something out of a training. Is there any alternative to learn and practice collaboration?
Right. So, there's a very interesting quote which I really like, which says, there is no point in your teaching if you are not walking the teaching. Your walking is the teaching, right? So that's kind of like, don't talk the talk, walk the talk. And I think that a lot of collaboration is done because of the signals that the leaders send around what they expect in collaboration. Now, if you are in a team and a leader walks in and says, "All right, listen, we really need to get this done, and all vacation is canceled, and if I need to call you on the weekend, then you must come into the." Do you think that anybody is going to oppose that? No, because the leader has set the tone for that is what he's expecting out of everybody, and that's how it kind of gets done. So I think a lot of it depends on having the role models and the prototype of leadership where they are not talking about collaboration, but rather they are living the collaboration spirit in the team. So, and training programs, I don't have anything against training programs. It's just that how do you embed that into the day-to-day process of the organization is key. And so, for example, sometimes when I'm working with leadership teams and they'll spend 2 days with me, and then everybody's like really inspired and how we want to do things differently, and etc., etc. But there are times when I will suggest a cadence where I will actually check in with the entire team for a good 3 or 6 months, once a month. It's just a check-in meeting. You had said we are going to operate in X manner. Are we doing it? If we are not doing it, why are we not doing it? Because it needs constant reminder, it needs constant reinforcement. And so there are ways in which you can set up nudges and ways in which you can set up reminders where people keep, remembering why they are doing what they're doing and how they want to do it. So I'll give, it struck me. So I used to do some work for Shell, which is the oil company. And no matter where we had a meeting with Shell, every single meeting, whether we were like in a classroom or we were on for offsite or whatever, or on one of those retreats or anything like that, they would always start with a safety briefing. These are the staircases, this is the exit. And I'm like, come on, like how many times are you going to say? But the important part was not just that they were starting with the safety briefing, but the fact that that signal was being sent in every single meeting that safety is the priority over here.
Yeah.
And so it's all about, creating an execution framework where you automatically are nudging people towards the kind of behaviors that you want to encourage versus send them once and bring them out. So you send them for a strategic thinking workshop, sure, but are you creating some sort of a framework where people have the opportunity to practice that strategic thinking on a daily basis?
Yeah.
So I think that's the broken connection. It's not that we don't need training, it's that we need the translation and embedding of that training on a daily basis. Otherwise, it's like, you've enjoyed the great session and, you had time off, and now you degenerate to whatever you were doing. It's very few times that they retain that and practice it.
I like this idea of nudges, and you relate it directly with the role modeling aspect of senior managers. So in order to protect ourselves, and this is something that is wired in our brain to survive, in fact, we need to mime whoever has the biggest power. So if that person is showing us certain behaviors that are in line with collaboration, we know that this is good to be done. No matters if you have it in all the websites pages of your company or all the posters in the office, nobody will follow it as long as somebody or the full senior management are behaving in that way. So it will be natural to mind. And I guess we underestimate very often the role of middle managers in order to be the amplifiers, the ones who are constantly sending the reminder and using any occasion, as you said, because we are living in a moment of stress. We have too much work. There needs to be somebody who reminds us that, oh, this is the right way to do it. Exactly the Shell approach about safety is every occasion is the good occasion to talk about something that really matters for us. And I guess it is good also to, when there is a performance appraisal, to reward the good behaviors, not only the results, but also the how you did it. And if collaboration is one of your core values, so if you are not rewarding that behavior, then that means that you are just wasting money like hell. You shouldn't even put it on a website if it is not.
This is something so important that you're talking about, Ivan. It's interesting because we have to be very clear about what we mean when we talk about rewarding collaborative behavior. You see, what happens on teams sometimes is, let's assume we are in a team and we are all supposed to collaborate, and you come up with a plan, and I'm like, Ivan, that's not going to work because of ABC. And then you come back, and then we are in a team meeting, and then somebody else comes up, and I'm like, yes, but we have seen that we have thrown resources at this in the past, and here's why it may not work. Now, come appraisal time, what do you think is the feedback going to be about me as a collaborator? Oh, Tanvi doesn't like to collaborate. She always, but it's not that I don't like to collaborate. It is that I'm actually trying to make sure that the goal of our collaboration gets somewhere. Now, my style may need correction for sure. I mean, stop chopping everybody's ideas down and, have a constructive way of putting it. But so don't start evaluating people before you have clarified those behaviors and, more importantly, supported those behaviors. You start testing before the time has, they have had time to learn it and imbibe it and practice it, then you're not going to get the results, right? So I think there are a few steps. Definitely, you should reward it. You should, evaluate, and you should track it. But there's a whole bunch of stuff you need to do before you track and evaluate, which is train and support, clarify and align.
Yeah.
And if you have done that, then and only then go in the direction of evaluation, because otherwise it means different things to different people.
Totally. Tanvi, thank you for reframing me, because yes, you made me think about something that is quite important. If it is not individualized, the meaning of collaboration, because for somebody in sales or in marketing may mean something else than for someone in accounting, because the way that the interactions, the framework that we are living in is different. We have to contextualize what does it mean collaboration for me as an individual while doing invoices, for instance, instead of just giving a big value to follow. It needs to be reflected into real behaviors that I can apply as a person, and it has to be related to me, not like for the full organization. Tanvi, we are almost reaching the end of this good discussion about collaboration at work, the challenges and how to overcome them. And you have mentioned you have your upcoming book, Deep Collaboration, that is going to be released early into 2024. Can you tell me a little bit more about what should we expect and for whom it is, this book?
Right. So Deep Collaboration is focused on teams that are trying to collaborate across silos. And in a lot of my organizations, with the digital transformation and business model re-engineering, etc., we are expecting more and more people to be working across silos. So, you could have commercial working with supply chain, you could have HR working with IT, you could have, marketing working with the HR. I mean, to move up the value chain, we have to, come together to collaborate outside our silos. But nobody knows how to do it because we were never taught to do it. God knows we have enough trouble collaborating within our function, forget about collaborating across functions, right?
Yes.
So, but here's the thing, from collaborating within a function to collaborating across functions, to then collaborating with your partners, And collaborating across ecosystems is a linear skill that you have to learn. And so this book is an invitation for companies to help equip their people to learn to collaborate across silos, because the companies that will dominate in the future are the ones who will be collaborating with partners in the ecosystem. But if you can't do collaboration internally, let me assure you, you will not be able to do it externally. So let's start preparing our people for what lies ahead, right? And so can this be applied to within teams that are not working across silos? Yes, definitely, because it's a higher order concept. It can be applied to situations that may be a step behind as well. But basically, it focuses on 5 types of conversations that you need to have with people on the other side of the fence before you start collaborating. Because in the absence of these 5 conversations, you're going to trip up. And then you're going to become one more statistic on why cross-silo collaboration fails 70% of the time. It's not cross-silo collaboration failed, it's that you failed to prepare for cross-silo collaboration. So these conversations, they're very straightforward. Each chapter has got, a reason for why this conversation is needed to be had. It has examples of my clients and case studies from my coaching clients as to how, when they ignored this conversation, what happened. And then there is a set of questions about, okay, start with these 5 or 7 or 8 questions to get the ball rolling. So it's a very, very applied book, because people who are doing cross-silo collaboration, they are already under a lot of pressure. They don't have time to sit and read like some theory about something. So it's a very applied book. You can read it and you can start working with it tomorrow morning.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, one, because you got me interested about the topic, we definitely need to learn more. So if I understood correctly, there is a page where I can go and put myself on the waiting list, so that when there is the book, I can get to know it. Is that correct, Dave, Tanvi?
That is correct. And we will be creating a set of downloads and resources, etc., also to go with the book. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, and by the way, if you're not interested in it, that itself is a little problematic, I feel. So so you need to go to www.leadersupgraded.com, which is my website, because everybody needs an upgrade. Everybody loves an upgrade. So leadersupgraded.com/deep, DEEP, because the book is called Deep Collaboration. So leadersupgraded.com/deep. All news around the book, all downloads, all resources can be found in that book. And you can also go there to get in touch with me and let me know what you thought of this great conversation that I think is something that I actually learned a lot from just talking to you, Ivan.
Thank you, Tanvi. I will put definitely the link for the waiting list. I will put also your profile, LinkedIn profile. That would be amazing if somebody has additional questions about collaboration or even more, because I think that you are like an encyclopedia of organizational behavior. So I think that this could be useful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you to you, Tanvi. It was lovely to have you today.